The story of Jesse James Hollywood is one that shook the nation, a tale of crime, greed, and a tragic end. It all began in the quiet suburbs of West Hills, California. Jesse James Hollywood, a name that would soon become infamous, was a small-time drug dealer. But his ambitions and reckless decisions would lead him down a dark path. In the summer of 2000, a series of events were set into motion that would culminate in the kidnapping and murder of a young boy, Nick Markowitz. This is the story of how a seemingly ordinary life spiraled into chaos and violence, forever altering the lives of everyone involved. Before the notorious events of 2000, Jesse James Hollywood was just another face in the crowd. Born on January 28, 1980 in West Hills, California, Hollywood grew up in a suburban setting that many would consider idyllic. His early life was marked by a semblance of normalcy, but beneath the surface, there were signs of the path he would eventually take. From a young age, Jesse was known for his charm and charisma. He was the kid who could talk his way out of trouble, the one who seemed destined for something more. But, as he entered his teenage years, that charm began to take a darker turn. Jesse became involved in small-time drug dealing, a venture that quickly escalated. By the time he was in his late teens, he had established himself as a significant player in the local drug scene. Jesse's rise in the underworld was fueled by his ambition and ruthlessness. He surrounded himself with a group of loyal followers, young men who were drawn to his magnetic personality and the promise of easy money. Together, they formed a gang that operated with a level of sophistication and brutality that belied their age. As Jesse's drug empire grew, so did his ego. He began to see himself as untouchable, a kingpin in a suburban kingdom. His home in West Hills became a hub of illegal activity, a place where deals were made and debts were settled. It was a dangerous game, one that Jesse played with increasing recklessness. The money and power that came with his drug operations only fueled Jesse's dangerous ambitions. He became more and more willing to resort to violence to maintain his position. Friends and associates who once saw him as a charismatic leader began to fear him. Jesse's world was one of constant tension and paranoia, a high-stakes game where one wrong move could mean the end. But for Jesse, the allure of power and control was too strong to resist. He continued to push boundaries, to take greater risks, all in the name of maintaining his empire. It was this unrelenting ambition that would eventually lead him down a path of no return, a path that culminated in the tragic events of the summer of 2000. Nick Markowitz was just a typical teenager, full of promise and potential. Born on September 19, 1984 in Los Angeles, California, Nick was the youngest child in his family. He grew up in a loving home, surrounded by the warmth and support of his parents and older half-brother, Ben. Nick was a bright student, known for his easygoing nature and infectious smile. He had a close-knit circle of friends and enjoyed the simple pleasures of teenage life, playing sports, hanging out with friends, and dreaming about the future. But Nick's life took a tragic turn due to circumstances beyond his control. His older half-brother, Ben, had accumulated a debt with Jesse James Hollywood, a debt that would seal Nick's fate. On August 6, 2000, Nick was walking near his home when he was abducted by Hollywood and his gang. The kidnapping was a shocking and brutal act, a stark contrast to the peaceful life Nick had known. For 3 days, Nick was held captive, a pawn in a dangerous game of power and retribution. During this time, Nick showed remarkable courage and resilience, despite the fear and uncertainty that must have plagued him. His captors transported him from place to place, trying to decide what to do next. Throughout this harrowing ordeal, Nick remained hopeful that he would be reunited with his family. Nick's family was frantic with worry, desperately trying to find him. They reached out to the authorities, the media, and the community, hoping for any information that could lead to Nick's safe return. The image of Nick's parents standing before the cameras, pleading for their son's life, is a heart-wrenching one. Their anguish and desperation were palpable, a testament to the depth of their love for Nick. Despite their efforts, Nick's fate was sealed. On August 9, 2000, Jesse James Hollywood made the fateful decision to end Nick's life. The gang took Nick to a remote area in the Santa Ynez Mountains, where he was brutally murdered and buried in a shallow grave. The discovery of Nick's body was a devastating blow to his family and the community. They had lost a beloved son, brother, and friend in the most senseless and violent way imaginable. Nick Markowitz's story is a tragic reminder of the innocent lives that are often caught in the crossfire of greed and violence. He was a young man with his whole life ahead of him, a life that was cruelly cut short by the actions of others. The impact of Nick's death continues to be felt by all who knew him and by those who have heard his story. Nick's memory lives on, a symbol of the devastating consequences of crime and the enduring strength of a family's love. On the morning of August 6, 2000, Nick Markowitz's life changed forever. It was a typical day for the 15-year-old, who had plans to hang out with friends and enjoy the summer break. But as he walked near his home in the quiet suburbs of Los Angeles, he had no idea that danger was lurking just around the corner. Unbeknownst to Nick, Jesse James Hollywood and his gang had been watching him, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The decision to target Nick was not a random act. It was a calculated move, orchestrated by Hollywood. He believed that by kidnapping Nick, he could force Nick's older half-brother, Ben, to pay off his debt. It was a ruthless strategy, one that showed Hollywood's complete disregard for human life. As Nick walked down the street, a van pulled up beside him. Before he could react, Hollywood's gang members jumped out and grabbed him. The abduction was swift and violent, leaving Nick no chance to escape. He was forced into the van, blindfolded and bound, his heart racing with fear and confusion. The world he had known was suddenly torn away, replaced by a terrifying new reality. The van sped away, taking Nick to an undisclosed location. Inside, Nick tried to make sense of what was happening. He knew his brother had been in trouble, but he never imagined that trouble would find its way to him. The fear and anxiety he felt in those moments are beyond comprehension. He was just a teenager, thrust into a world of adult problems and dangers. The gang drove Nick to a remote house where he was kept under constant watch. Hollywood and his accomplices debated their next move, unsure of how to handle the situation they had created. For Nick, the hours turned into days, each moment filled with uncertainty and dread. He was held captive, a pawn in a dangerous game that he had no control over. During his captivity, Nick showed remarkable strength and resilience. Despite the fear that must have gripped him, he remained hopeful that he would be rescued. He tried to stay calm, holding on to the belief that his family would find him and bring him home. But as the days passed, that hope began to wane. Meanwhile, Nick's family was in a state of panic. They had reported him missing and were working tirelessly to find him. The community rallied around them, offering support and assistance in the search for Nick. But with each passing day, the chances of finding him grew slimmer. Nick's abduction was a calculated act of violence, one that highlighted the dark and dangerous world of Jesse James Hollywood. It was a world where human life was treated as a bargaining chip, and where the innocent could become victims of someone else's greed and ambition. The terror and helplessness that Nick experienced during those days remain a haunting reminder of the lengths to which some will go to achieve their goals. As the days turned into weeks, the search for Nick Markowitz intensified. The community's hope dwindled, but the determination to find him never wavered. Law enforcement officers scoured every possible lead, but the trail seemed to go cold. It wasn't until a hiker stumbled upon a shallow grave in the Santa Ynez Mountains that the grim reality of Nick's fate was revealed. The discovery of Nick's body was a devastating moment. The serene landscape of the Santa Ynez Mountains contrasted sharply with the horror of what had occurred there. As investigators arrived at the scene, they were met with the haunting sight of a life cut tragically short. The area was quickly cordoned off, crime scene tape fluttering in the breeze, marking the location where Nick's young life had ended. Forensic teams meticulously combed through the site, gathering evidence and trying to piece together the final moments of Nick's life. The shallow grave, hastily dug, spoke volumes about the callousness of his captors. The scene was a stark reminder of the brutality that Nick had faced, a brutality that no one should ever have to endure. The police worked tirelessly, documenting every detail, every piece of evidence that could help bring justice for Nick and his family. The emotional weight of the scene was palpable, affecting even the most seasoned investigators. The discovery of a young boy's body, buried in a shallow grave, was a sight that would stay with them forever. As the evidence was collected and analyzed, the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The fingerprints, the tire tracks, and the personal items found at the scene all pointed back to Jesse James Hollywood and his gang. The crime scene became a crucial part of the investigation, providing the tangible proof needed to build a case against those responsible for Nick's abduction and murder. The Markowitz family was notified of the discovery, and their world was shattered once again. The hope that they had clung to was gone, replaced by the devastating reality of their loss. The community mourned with them, holding vigils and memorials to honor Nick's memory. The outpouring of support was a testament to the impact that Nick had on those around him, and a reminder of the precious life that had been taken too soon. The crime scene was more than just a location. It was a symbol of the senseless violence and cruelty that had claimed Nick's life. It was a place where innocence was lost, and where a family's worst fears were realized. The images of the crime scene, the investigators at work, and the grieving family are powerful reminders of the human cost of greed and violence. As we move forward in this story, we will delve deeper into the dark world of Jesse James Hollywood and the events that led to this tragic outcome. After the shocking discovery of Nick Markowitz's body, the focus of the investigation shifted to capturing those responsible. The evidence collected at the crime scene pointed directly to Jesse James Hollywood and his gang. The authorities knew they had to act swiftly to prevent any more violence and to bring justice for Nick's family. A nationwide manhunt was launched. Jesse James Hollywood, now a fugitive, became one of the most wanted men in America. His face was plastered on every news channel, and his name became synonymous with cold-blooded violence. The FBI joined local law enforcement in the search, utilizing every resource available to track him down. Hollywood, aware of the net closing in around him, went on the run. He changed his appearance and used fake identities, moving from place to place to stay ahead of the authorities. The images of Hollywood in disguise, captured by security cameras, show a man desperate to escape the consequences of his actions. The hunt for Hollywood spanned several states and even crossed international borders. Tips and sightings poured in from across the country, each one meticulously followed up by the investigators. The tension was palpable as the authorities got closer and closer to their target. The relentless pursuit showcased the determination of law enforcement to bring Hollywood to justice. In a dramatic turn of events, Hollywood fled to Brazil, hoping to evade capture by blending into the bustling streets of Rio de Janeiro. However, the FBI, working with international counterparts, tracked him down. The arrest in Brazil was a pivotal moment in the manhunt. The footage of Hollywood being escorted by police, handcuffed and defeated, marked the end of his flight from justice. Jesse James Hollywood was extradited back to the United States to face trial. The courtroom was packed, the eyes of the nation watching as justice was served. Hollywood, once a feared gang leader, now faced the consequences of his actions. The trial was a grueling process, filled with emotional testimonies and damning evidence. In the end, Hollywood was convicted and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The closing of the prison cell door was a symbolic end to his reign of terror. The image of Hollywood behind bars is a powerful reminder that no one is above the law, and justice, though sometimes delayed, will ultimately prevail. The manhunt for Jesse James Hollywood was more than just a search for a fugitive. It was a testament to the resilience and dedication of those who sought to bring closure to a grieving family. The capture and conviction of Hollywood provided a measure of solace to Nick Markowitz's loved ones, knowing that the person responsible for his death would never walk free again. While Jesse James Hollywood was on the run, he didn't just rely on luck to stay ahead of law enforcement. Hollywood had a network of friends and acquaintances who provided him with places to hide and resources to survive. These hideouts ranged from secluded cabins in the woods to hidden rooms in urban apartments. Each location was chosen carefully to minimize the risk of detection. One of the most significant hideouts was a remote cabin deep in the forest of Northern California. This cabin, owned by a friend of Hollywood, became his refuge after the initial heat from the manhunt. The dense trees and rugged terrain provided natural cover, making it difficult for authorities to locate him. Inside, Hollywood lived a life of isolation, constantly on edge, knowing that any misstep could lead to his capture. The cabin was stocked with non-perishable food, a generator for electricity, and basic amenities to sustain him for weeks, if not months. Hollywood's time in hiding was marked by extreme caution. He avoided using phones, credit cards, or anything that could leave a digital trail. His communication with the outside world was limited to trusted individuals who were equally cautious. Despite the isolation, Hollywood managed to stay informed about the ongoing manhunt. He kept a low profile, rarely venturing outside the cabin during daylight hours. However, the solitude and constant fear of being discovered took a toll on Hollywood. The stress of living as a fugitive began to weigh heavily on him. The once confident and fearless gang leader became increasingly paranoid and anxious. His appearance changed drastically. He grew a thick beard and let his hair grow long, hoping to disguise himself further. But Hollywood knew that he couldn't stay in one place forever. As the search intensified and authorities closed in on his known associates, he realized that his hideout in the forest was no longer safe. He decided to make a daring move, crossing state lines and eventually leaving the country. Before fleeing to Brazil, Hollywood spent time in various safe houses across the United States. These locations were often the homes of friends who were either sympathetic to his plight or intimidated by his reputation. Each move was a calculated risk, but Hollywood managed to stay one step ahead of law enforcement. The journey to Brazil was fraught with challenges. Hollywood used fake passports and traveled under assumed names. He relied on a network of contacts to help him navigate through airports and border crossings without raising suspicion. Once in Brazil, Hollywood hoped to blend into the crowded streets of Rio de Janeiro, believing that the bustling city would provide the anonymity he needed to evade capture. However, the FBI and their international counterparts were relentless. They tracked Hollywood's movements through a combination of intelligence gathering and tips from informants. The image of Hollywood in disguise, captured by a surveillance camera at an airport, became a crucial piece of evidence that eventually led to his arrest. Hollywood's time in hiding was a game of cat and mouse, filled with tension and uncertainty. The lengths he went to avoid capture underscore the severity of his crimes and the determination of law enforcement to bring him to justice. His eventual capture in Brazil marked the end of his life on the run and the beginning of his reckoning for the brutal murder of Nick Markowitz. As we continue to explore the dark world of Jesse James Hollywood, we see how his actions and decisions led to his downfall. The story of his hideouts and his life as a fugitive adds another layer to the complex and tragic narrative that has captivated so many. The capture of Jesse James Hollywood in Brazil marked a significant turning point in the pursuit of justice for Nick Markowitz, but the journey was far from over. Hollywood's extradition to the United States set the stage for a high-profile trial that would captivate the nation and bring the harrowing details of Nick's kidnapping and murder into the spotlight. As Hollywood was escorted into the courtroom, the atmosphere was charged with tension. The courtroom was filled with reporters, family members, and curious onlookers, all eager to witness the proceedings. The prosecution laid out a compelling case, detailing Hollywood's role as the mastermind behind the abduction and subsequent murder of Nick Markowitz. They presented evidence that painted a chilling picture of a young man driven by greed and a ruthless desire to maintain his power. Witness after witness took the stand, recounting the events leading up to Nick's tragic death. Friends, acquaintances, and former gang members testified, shedding light on Hollywood's manipulative and violent nature. Their testimonies revealed the extent of Hollywood's control over his gang and the fear he instilled in those around him. The courtroom listened in horror as the details of Nick's final days were recounted, highlighting the psychological and physical torment he endured. The defense, on the other hand, attempted to downplay Hollywood's involvement, portraying him as a misguided youth caught up in circumstances beyond his control. They argued that the actions of his gang members were not directly ordered by Hollywood, and that he should not bear the full weight of responsibility for Nick's death. However, The evidence and testimonies presented by the prosecution proved overwhelming. One of the most poignant moments of the trial came when Nick's family took the stand. Their emotional testimonies provided a heart-wrenching glimpse into the profound impact of Nick's loss. They spoke of a young boy with dreams and aspirations whose life was senselessly cut short. The grief and pain were palpable, leaving a lasting impression on everyone in the courtroom. The trial lasted for several weeks, with each day bringing new revelations and intensifying the emotional weight of the proceedings. The jury was tasked with sifting through the evidence and testimonies to deliver a just verdict. After careful deliberation, they found Jesse James Hollywood guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping. The sentencing phase of the trial was equally intense. The prosecution argued for life without parole, emphasizing the premeditated and callous nature of Hollywood's actions. The defense pleaded for leniency, citing Hollywood's youth and potential for rehabilitation. In the end, the judge handed down a sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole, ensuring that Hollywood would spend the rest of his days behind bars. The trial of Jesse James Hollywood was a significant moment in the quest for justice for Nick Markowitz. It brought closure to a family devastated by loss and served as a stark reminder of the consequences of violence and greed. The courtroom, once filled with tension and uncertainty, now stood as a testament to the unwavering pursuit of justice. As we move towards the conclusion of this tragic story, we reflect on the dark world of Jesse James Hollywood and the impact of his actions on countless lives. The trial of Jesse James Hollywood may have concluded, but the repercussions of his actions continue to echo through the lives of those affected by the tragic events. For the Markowitz family, the verdict brought a measure of justice, but it could never restore what was lost. The pain of losing Nick remains an ever-present shadow, a constant reminder of the void left in their hearts. In the years following the trial, the Markowitz family has worked tirelessly to honor Nick's memory. They have become advocates for victims' rights, using their platform to raise awareness about the dangers of gang violence and the devastating impact it can have on families. Their strength and resilience are a testament to their love for Nick and their determination to ensure that his legacy lives on. The community that once knew peace was forever changed by the events of that fateful summer. Neighbors who once felt secure in their homes now locked their doors a little tighter and watched their children a little closer. The loss of Nick Markowitz serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the importance of cherishing every moment with loved ones. Hollywood's gang, once a feared presence in the area, has disbanded in the wake of his conviction. Many of the former members have faced their own legal battles, with some seeking redemption and others continuing down a path of crime. The ripple effects of Hollywood's influence have left a lasting mark on those who fell under his sway, highlighting the destructive power of manipulation and violence. In the broader context, the case of Jesse James Hollywood has become a cautionary tale, a grim example of how quickly greed and ambition can lead to unimaginable consequences. It has sparked conversations about the need for stricter laws and better support systems for at-risk youth, aiming to prevent future tragedies from occurring. As we reflect on the aftermath and impact of this harrowing story, we are reminded of the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring power of love and justice. The Markowitz family, the community, and all those touched by Nick's story continue to strive for a world where such senseless acts of violence are a thing of the past. As we reach the end of this harrowing tale, it's essential to take a moment to reflect on the profound lessons it imparts. The story of Jesse James Hollywood and Nick Markowitz is not just a tale of crime and punishment. It is a stark reminder of the fragility of life and the devastating impact of our choices. For the Markowitz family, the loss of Nick is an unhealable wound, a void that can never be filled. Their journey through grief and their tireless advocacy for victims' rights is a testament to their strength and resilience. They have turned their pain into a powerful force for change, ensuring that Nick's legacy continues to inspire and protect others. The community that was once a serene haven was forever altered by the events of that fateful summer. The fear and mistrust that followed serve as a sobering reminder of the consequences of unchecked ambition and violence. The disbanding of Hollywood's gang and the legal battles faced by its former members highlight the long-lasting ripple effects of a single individual's actions. On a broader scale, The case of Jesse James Hollywood has sparked crucial conversations about the need for stronger laws and support systems for at-risk youth. It underscores the importance of vigilance, compassion, and community in preventing such tragedies from occurring in the future. As we conclude this journey into the dark world of Jesse James Hollywood, we are reminded of the enduring power of love, justice, and the human spirit. The Markowitz family, the affected community, and all those who have been touched by Nick's story continue to strive for a world where senseless acts of violence are a relic of the past. Thank you for joining us in this exploration of a tragic yet profoundly impactful story. May we all carry its lessons with us and work towards a safer, more compassionate world.